Digital?
Yeah, that's ZNS Digital, the people station in your pocket.
This is The Rundown, giving you the story behind the story with a new perspective every Thursday with host Ahmad Rashad Thompson. This is The Rundown.
In Harbour Island, North Minnesota, I'm Charles Fisher. This is ZNS.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, leaders of every generation, good evening. Welcome to the Rundown on Leadership. I am your host, Ahmad Rashad Thompson, and I am thrilled, and I do mean thrilled, that you've decided to spend your Thursday night with us here on the Rundown on Leadership. And to our global leaders tuning in online, drop your city or country in the comments. We want to hear from you. We want you to let us know where you're from, where you're tuning in from, and why it's important that you're in this conversation today. Because these conversations, ladies and gentlemen, are a movement. They stretch beyond borders, they're beyond generations and beyond perspectives. This isn't just another talk show, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Rundown on Leadership, where we don't just talk leadership, we elevate it. Now, if you're sitting here thinking, where's Clint tonight? Don't worry. There's no need to adjust your screen, refresh your feed, or check your Wi-Fi. This is a Thursday night, ladies and gentlemen. That means we shift the focus to all things leadership. This might be your first Thursday night with us in a while, so let me bring you up to speed. Every Thursday night, we're showing up right here to have bold, necessary conversations about what it really takes to lead in life, in business, and in a world that desperately needs direction. Now, let me be radically clear, ladies and gentlemen. We are facing, without question, a global leadership crisis. It's getting harder and harder to find the kind of leadership that we need right now. Leadership that's rooted in authenticity, humility, strategy, and humanity. And with all that in mind, I have a question for you. Open your mind's eye and think for a moment. Have you ever worked for or with a leader who was just a catastrophe? I mean just a disaster. The kind of leader that disregards, berates, and demeans their employees rather than uplift, motivate, and empower them. You know the type very well. You could smell them right now. The leader who underestimates how important the psychological safety of their teams really is. The truth is, so many leaders mismanage the opportunities they have to demonstrate humanity and leadership and lead into the power of vulnerability. That's why this show exists, ladies and gentlemen. We're not just here to point fingers at the problem. We're here to spark change, stir hearts, and equip you with the mindset, the tools, and the truth to rise and lead well. And tonight's show is a special one, not just because of our guest, not just because of the conversation, but because of the timing. Today is May 1st, the first day of Mental Health Awareness Month. And while the world is finally catching up to the truth that mental health is health, the workplace remains one of the greatest pressure cookers for emotional strain for employees at all levels. Here are the facts. According to the National Alliance on Mental Health, 1 in 5 employees experience a mental health condition each year. A 2023 work and well-being survey facilitated by the American Psychological Association revealed that more than 75% of employees say workplace stress affects their mental health. In a 2023 Mental Health at Work report, it was discovered that 81% of employees say they'll be looking for workplaces that support mental health, and a mere 24% of employees believe that their companies care about their well-being. This is according to Gallup's State of the Workplace in 2023. Employees today aren't prepared to put up with the same old, same old. They are prioritizing their mental health in more ways than one. But when the storm hits, that's when it gets real. That's why tonight's show is so important. We're talking about mental health and why it needs to be a part of a leader's strategic plan and how to anchor well-being as a non-negotiable rather than an afterthought. Because leadership is not about having all the answers. It's not about showing up and being boastful. It's about showing up for your team when the questions get hard. So lean in, get your notebook, and prepare to shift your mindset and sharpen your mission. This is the Rundown on Leadership, and tonight we're talking about mental health in the workplace. Don't blink, the breakthrough's next.
I am a master plumber by profession. I've been doing plumbing for over 40 odd years. When I was 9 months old, I was diagnosed with polio. To me, living with polio, I took it the way it is. I never allowed my polio to get in my way of anything. In fact, I love when people doubt me, and I just prove them wrong. And let me tell you, in the world, you could only find a plumber as good as me, but you ain't gonna find no plumber better than me. People with disability, they just need a chance. In this program, I feel so encouraged. Most of the mentors have different kind of disability, but disabilities like me. Sharing and caring and showing so much support with people with disability. They would encourage you to go beyond. I wish this was around a long time ago. Right now, I would have been a millionaire. You out there who have a disability, don't be afraid. Take the step. If you believe it, you could achieve it. And remember one thing, ain't no one better than me, and ain't no one better than y'all. God made all us equal.
For more information about how the SBDC can help your small business to make a big impact, give us a call at 461-7232 or visit sbdcbahamas.com.
We seem to remember our athletes when they make us proud at the finish line. Throw a Junkanoo parade when they return home, toss them a few dollars. And then forget about them until the next Members time. Of the prestigious Fourth Estate should never sell themselves to any politician. Instead, keep their hands and noses clean in order to publish or broadcast the unadulterated truth. Well, that's how I see it anyway.
Read as I see it, exclusively at ZNNSBahamas.com. New articles premiere on Mondays at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the Rundown on Leadership. Tonight, I'm so excited, so honored to be joined by a trusted colleague in the HR space and a silent mentor to me, Mrs. Kimberly Fraser. She's the head of HR, talent and development at AML Foods. Kim, first of all, thank you for joining us tonight. We are so excited to have you here to have this conversation about mental health, well-being in the workplace, and why it's important to prioritize that in this day and age. Kim, tell me, what does mental health in your mind mean, and how should organizations and leaders be prioritizing that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. So mental health refers to an individual emotional well-being, social well-being, and their psychological well-being. And it's very important for organizations to prioritize mental health because it keeps your team resilient and it keeps your team able to perform at their very best if they have the mindset where they're not emotionally driven, where the social ills are not taking over their well-being. And so to be able to foster a culture within the organization where it is highly prioritized, same as productivity, same as the physical ability, mental health is very, very important in order to maximize potential of your team.
When you think, Kim, of the industry we work in, human resources, we are the people who are supposed to protect the people and the employer experience. Why do you think that there are still so many leaders who are absent of the fact that a healthy employee is going to be a productive employee? Why does that still plague us from time to time?
I think the mindset of some of the leaders throughout organizations are still focused a lot more on productivity. And they do not realize that productivity is not going to be sustainable unless you ensure that the well-being of your employees are at your foremost mind. And so, once again, fostering that workplace culture where mental health is a conversation, where mental health, you train on it, where the conversations are related to a stress relief, where work-life balance is something that you definitely promote within an environment is crucial.
You mentioned a topic, Kim, that I am a little bit radical against. I believe that there should be a place in the workplace for workplace fit.
Absolutely.
I think worklife balance versus work-life fit. I believe that work-life balance is in some cases a figment of our imagination. And I say that because I think that it's the responsibility of the individual to do the best they can to protect their peace, to protect their sanity, and to protect their space. Additionally, it is a strategic tool of a leader, of an organization, to demonstrate that we have your mental well-being top of mind. When you think of how organizations today, Kim, are, I guess, falling behind in this concept of workplace balance, work-life balance, what does work-life balance actually mean, and what should organizations be doing to enhance that?
Well, definitely work-life balance is making sure, like you say, one is able to prioritize, right? You have to know when to turn on and turn off in order to have that frame of mind for you to be able to give the attention in your personal space as well as on the job. And so it first starts with you as an individual, ensuring that you protect yourself. And then secondly, of course, it's ensuring that the employer or the organization is one who are also protecting their employees and who are able to understand and see when there's an employee that is not well, right? And so it's demonstrating that ability to learn your employees, demonstrating that ability to recognize when things aren't going right. Recognize when you have an employee who was a star performer and then all of a sudden that individual is not performing well. And so rather than you following through your disciplinary process is taking a moment and once again promoting that environment where it matters. And so I'm going to have a conversation with you. I'm going to pull you in and find out what's going on. Is everything okay with you? And oftentimes you don't understand how an employee is going to confide in you and able to express, you know what, it's not really anything work-related, but it's what's going on in my personal life that is causing me not to be my best version of myself in this environment or in the organization.
Now, Kim, you are talking about humanity and leadership. That specific point references what it means to be a human being in leadership, looking after the well-being of those you get the privilege and honor of leading.
Absolutely.
But you're also talking about a contrast to our cultural upbringing, where you don't come to work to make friends, where my business is my business. What right does a leader have to infringe, to ask questions, to lean in when they recognize that an employee, a team member, is not their best self, it's not their usual whatever version of themselves? How do we now bridge the gap between what Grammy taught us and what now employees require and in many cases crave?
Well, I think it's all about that trust that the employee will have in you, right? It's not really infringing on their personal space or wanting to know what's going on in their personal lives, but it's creating that culture where employees they feel safe and they feel supported. And so they're going to come to you, right? They're going to be able to open up to you and to express themselves freely. And with you being an employer that has that culture embedded in your organization, where there's that open door policy, where's that culture of we care, we want to be there for you, we want to support you in your holistic well-being, not just on the job, not just worried about you being a star performer, but what does it take for you to be a star performer? So we want you to see us as an employer, us as an organization, truly vested in making sure that you as the employee are well as a holistic individual. And so it's creating that culture where the employees feel safe so that they come to you and they don't mind opening up to you and expressing themselves.
Yes, that is so true, Kim. I can't tell you many people, in my experience, when relationships are fostered when people establish a circle of truth. The fact that when you say something, it will remain with you and me.
Absolutely.
So often in our culture, and even in the global workspace, employees are conscious about sharing because they feel like what they've shared will be repeated somewhere, will make national news when they advise their leader or a trusted team member that, something is going on at home, or a family member is, experiencing some difficulty. When you think, Kim, though, of what it means to lead with that humanity, how do we, because saying things like open door policy and workplace well-being and workplace culture, they sound good. But so many organizations just simply put them on the website or have them on the wall. How do you actualize a place where the open door policy actually comes to life?
Well, once again, you create that culture. It's embedded in your culture, that there is the open door policy, and you live it. It's something that you're living daily. You're not just hanging it up on the wall.
Yes.
It's not a part of your values, but you're modeling those behavior of it being something that's utmost important to you. And the humanity part of it comes in where sometimes we just have to put ourselves in our employees' shoes. As leaders, we often, sometimes we don't realize that, hey, this is a human that we're dealing with, so we have to be empathetic. We have to sometimes take a back seat and say, you know what if it was me? What if it was my family member?
Yes.
How would I want to be treated? Do I want to be supported? Do I want to feel like this is a safe haven for me to be open and to be free and to express myself so that it can help me be a better employee? It does not interfere or disrupt who I can really possibly be and the value that I can bring to the organization.
Yes.
And so I see it from that angle. Yeah.
That's a very important point, because I think when employees and team members feel, when they feel this open door policy, when they feel the sense that you care for them, when you feel that they can come to you and share what's on their heart, what's on their mind, what's impacting them, then they will lean into it more.
Absolutely.
When it's just some kind of poster show or some checkbox exercise, they know it's not inauthentic and they pull away. But Kim, let's shine the light on what it means to be a leader and face your own mental health challenges. And I think we also need to level set the conversation before we move any further. Mental health well-being does not necessarily mean that somebody has mental health challenges or mental health issues. It doesn't mean that somebody is mentally ill if they're prioritizing and focusing on their mental health. I put it this way. You encourage your employees on a daily basis to go to the doctor, get a physical, get physically checked out. The same is true for mental health. What do you think we need to do differently as leaders in our organizations to let employees know that we don't just prioritize the mental health and the awareness of it, but also that they should in their lives as well,
Well, I would say, once again, that it has to be embedded, right? We have to live it.
Yeah.
We have to live it daily. Because in order for our organization to be well-sustained, you have to have employees that are well, and they are well in all aspects, emotionally, physically, psychologically. They must be well in order to be able to perform at their utmost best. So once again, it's living it, it's walking it, and not just talking mental health. It's not just talking employee well-being, right? We hear it all the time, but what does it truly mean to live it every day and to be true to it as an organization, that this is something that we truly value in our employees. We truly value it so that we're creating that culture, we're fostering that workplace atmosphere where mental health is priority.
Yes. Kim, as a leader, as a woman in leadership, as someone that has to navigate both your own personal challenges and leading an organization, how do leaders check in? How do leaders manage their opportunities with mental health and the well-being and prioritizing that health? Put another way, Kim, can you think of a moment in your career where disaster struck, something went awry, things didn't go as you planned, and it affected your ability to show up as a leader? How do you deal with that?
Well, first of all, it's making sure that you are, embedding a culture where you are not reactive. You are proactive.
Wow.
And so it's putting, the necessary systems in place where you're able to adapt quickly to when anything strikes. You're able to adapt to it. You're able to pivot. You're able to action or enact workflows where there's no further disruption. And so it's really making sure that you put on a proactive approach. You put things in place where when disaster strikes, you're still able to move on with little disruption, but you're able to still function at your very best. And so that's what I would say when disaster strikes. You just need to be ready, and being ready means putting the things in place before it strikes, being very proactive.
Being proactive instead of being reactive.
Absolutely.
In our culture, we are a very reactionary people. We do react when something has gone wrong, and we usually react instead of respond.
Yes.
As a leader, as someone that is at the intersection, Kim, of leading the people experience and the business experience, how do you, what advice do you give to the leader that's just now starting his or her journey, that's been told or taught that the best way to lead is to be strong and strong-arm and be forceful versus humane and vulnerable and lean into the softer side of leadership, the humane side of leadership? What advice do you give that person right now?
Well, firstly, you have to lead yourself, right? You have to lead yourself. You have to make sure that your mindset is in a place where you're able to pour in. Because oftentimes, if a leader is not well in their own right, then you're not able to pour in. You're not able to lead anybody else. And so you have to stay true to yourself first, and you have to make sure focus on yourself first in order for you to be able to pour in to someone else. Secondly, I would say that you must be very willing to make the shifts yourself, right? You're not going to lead every day not facing challenges. And so you also have to be ready to make that pivot. You also have to be ready to know when it's time to for it to turn on or turn off. And so those are the two things that I would advise someone. You have to lead yourself first, and then you have to know when there's that time for you to make that shift as well.
To determine whether or not this thing is continuing to serve you, whether or not this situation, this perspective, this organization is doing the things that you need to be thriving in your role as well.
Absolutely.
That's important, Kim. When we think, Kim, of the landscape of leadership globally, so many things are happening on a daily basis. Employees are facing their own individual challenges. Organizations are facing challenges. We are now, for the first time in the history of the planet, faced with connecting with 6 generations at once in one workplace. As we wrap up this segment, Kim, what are you finding, and we'll talk about it more after we come from the break, but what are you finding, Kim, right now that's the biggest difference between the way people of a certain generation, like my father's generation, age 60 and above, and the 20-something-year-olds are dealing with and handling mental health issues right now? What's the starkest contrast you found in your experience?
I would say, back then, we had the millennials, the Gen Zs, all of those various generations. Sometimes they have that entitlement mindset. And it's okay. It's okay, because nowadays it's them wanting so much more for themselves and not realizing that sometimes it takes time to get to where our parents went at a very quick manner. Back then, things have changed now, and so it's realizing that it's going to take time for you to really elevate, and so you're not entitled. And so I would see that being one of the major contrasts, where back then in our era there was more of the things were you were able to easily get, things that you wanted. Nowadays, you have to really work hard for it. And if you don't put your mind to it, the handouts are not going to be there.
The handouts are not going to be there. We're going to pick this up when we come back from the break. Please stay with us on the Rundown on Leadership. We return shortly.
Absolutely.
There are over 3 million shipwrecks on the ocean floor, just waiting to be found. Nothing is truly ever lost at sea, only hidden by time and sand. When I put this fleet together, it wasn't just for fun. And although we do have fun, we never lose sight of our goal. Right here, right now, we are on a mission.
Join us on social media, a new and dynamic game show based on the Ministry of Education's primary and junior high school social studies curriculum. Students from schools across the Bahamas go head-to-head as their knowledge of social studies is challenged. In this episode, Gambier Primary battles with Sadie Curtis Primary School. Which school will emerge as winner? To find out, join us as these two schools engage in intense competition. Don't miss it.
The internet isn't just for surfing. There's a sea of shoppers buying online, and you can connect with them on Tingsy. Tingsy is the SBDC's online storefront built for Bahamians. Take your business to the next level by selling to customers online, both at home and around the world. People want Bahamian things, and if you got things to sell, sell on Tingsy. Find out how you can connect with a sea of buyers by visiting tingsybahamas.com.
Welcome back to the Rundown on Leadership. We are continuing our conversation with Kimberly Fraser, Head of Human Resources, Talent and Development at AML Foods Limited. Kim, crisis and disaster. It affects in a major way the mental health and the mental health well-being of team members, of customers, of clients, and of leaders. Tell us about a time, Kim, when how has crisis shape and affect your leadership and leadership in general? When crisis breaks out, right? Where does the leader focus first?
Mm-hmm. Well, firstly, you have to assess the situation. So you have to, understand what happened, and you have to make sure that you get a clear understanding of the potential impact that this crisis is going to have on the organization. Secondly, you definitely need to communicate clearly, right? You have to be transparent and communicate what has happened. Have that reassurance that, there is a recovery plan and that everything will be okay. And then thirdly, you have to focus on your people, right? We talk about mental health, we talk about what it does and how it affects people. And so you have to ensure that your actions and the decisions that are made are helping or does not interfere with the well-being of your team members in an organization.
But Kim, that's hard to do. How do you, because you won't be able to make the perfect decision.
Absolutely.
Right? But what I'm hearing you say is that the decisions that you make, the way you approach it should be strategic, it should be people-focused, and it should also be incumbent upon understanding what the business needs at this time. Crisis can be relative, right? To one individual, they could weather the storm. To somebody else, they could crumble beneath it. How do leaders today, Kim? What should leaders be doing when their team members indicate that all is not well within the organization? They introduce a concept, a mindset. They introduce something that's taken place on the job that you have no idea of as a leader. How do you now move forward to help bring that thing to light, to bring it to resolution, and to make that employee feel seen and heard?
Yeah. Well, transparency, definitely. You have to be transparent with the communication. You have to bring hope, right? It has to be some reassurance that, there is a recovery plan. We will rebound from this. And they have to see that the actions that you are implementing is one where they are reassured that everything will be okay. And so it's immediately going into action mode and putting the steps in place where you are going to build and ensure that there is a recovery process to ensure that there's continuity within the organization.
When you think, Kim, of defining moments in leadership, you have been at this for a while. You've been through the throes, I'm sure. Can you think of a defining moment in your leadership journey, Kim, that made a difference for you and caused you to kind of propel yourself through the difficulty?
Yeah. Well, absolutely, and I would refer to the latest moment. So just 2 weeks ago at my place of employment, there was a catastrophe, and it was a real defining moment, not only for me as a leader, but for all leaders within our organization. Just experiencing, what happened on that particular day, and realizing that, hey, people was of utmost focus.
Wow.
As we watched the incident unfold, it's, you know, focusing on how is everybody feeling, how is everybody doing, and then, you know, the very next day, going into the office and having your ultimate leader, your captain, be so optimism about it being hope in the future, and already in ready mode to take action, to build, to recover. It's definitely defining. And then seeing all of the stakeholders come together and really working in a unified manner to ensure that whatever needed to happen, short term, medium term, and even long term, because as you now focus on rebuilding, you're putting the things in place that's going to propel us to that next level. And so seeing how everybody gathered and just really quickly went into recovery mode in all of our respective roles. It was a true defining moment for us. And then, you know, ensuring that our employees were well taken care of, ensuring that we, you know, made it known to our employees that, hey, there's no need to be concerned. We're going to ensure that you are still treated as a valued team member within our organization. And so that was absolutely a very defining moment for me and, like I say, all of the leaders within the organization as well.
Kim, it sounds to me that you're blessed. I'll say that. Let me ask why I say that, because as the head of the people resource, the thing that really drives any business, you seem to be a part of a team that gets it. That understands that the people are not your biggest asset, but they're really your biggest responsibility.
Absolutely.
Talk to a leader, Kim, that right now may be in HR, that might be a team leader, a hiring manager, someone in a position of leadership that does not get the support they need from their other leaders, that would focus on business and loss and inventory and cost versus the souls that were impacted by this catastrophe or any other one. What do you say to that person who may be finding themselves kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place? You know, they really want to pour out and help, but their hands are tied behind their back because the strategy is always going to be cost versus souls.
Yeah, well, definitely unity is strength. And making sure that everybody stays on the same page and we focus on one goal is paramount. And without people, there's no sustainability.
Say that again.
Without people, there's no business sustainability, right? And so making sure that you understand the magnitude of how strong embedding a people-oriented culture within your organization, how that's going to propel your environment, your organization to the very next level is very, very key. And without support, you know, and all stakeholders involved, the chain is broken. It has to be the united effort to ensure that this happens. It has to be the united effort for it to work, for everybody to gather around the table, everybody to, you know, gather their collective minds, their collective thoughts in terms of what's next. What do we all have to do to make sure that this happens, to make sure that we are able to sustain, rebuild, and be better at it? It has to be collective minds that are sitting around the table making these decisions that's going to be powerful for an organization to move ahead.
It has to be collective effort. It cannot be an individual fight. It must be that the team, whether executive or junior or senior leader, leadership teams are focused on the same thing. Because the question was not, what do you pay attention to? The question was, what do you focus on? And your response was, you focus on the people that will drive this continuity or not, the people that will be affected by this or not. Because what happens, Kim, is not just the employees. We're talking about families now. Our community at large is going to be impacted by whatever has taken place. And so many of us individualize our response to people issues because we figure that's just how she go.
Yeah.
You can't mind him or her. But we don't realize that those things affect the general workplace. So let's shift our conversation and Kim to people who diminish mental health and the well-being of mentality in the workplace. Those cantankerous leaders, those cantankerous employees who are allowed, and I use the word allowed for a reason, to come every day and just run amok. How have you in your career, Kim, dealt with, managed, engaged, even the ones that are troublemakers that may be adding to the stress levels and the challenges we face in the workplace? What is your strategy to dealing with those persons who many people want to stray away from and, you know, throw their hands up at?
Well, I could tell you, I said earlier, you have to lead yourself first. And I can tell you, those cantankerous people, the ones that come to work every day and their goal is not to make it easy for someone else.
Wow.
They need to take a self-reflection. Something is not right with them.
Yes.
And so as an HR professional, it's really making sure that you surround yourself with those type of people, have the one-on-ones, you know, coach them, find out what's happening to them, because at the end of the day, if you're a leader and you're going to be one that's not well respected, one that is, you know, cantankerous, one that employees don't want to work for, then as an organization, it's going to impact the organization.
Absolutely.
And so it's making sure that you use your gifted talent as an HR professional and try to dig deep into what's happening with that individual. See if you can be of some support to help that individual to realize what he or she is doing is not right. And who knows, that individual themselves, as leaders, we go through things ourselves. And so deep down, that may be something that's affecting that person, by that individual is the way he or she is in the workplace. And so it's tapping into that, opening up that opportunity for you to be able to pour into that individual and try to see how you can get that person's mindset to shift.
Yes, that mindset is so important, because we have those employees that come to work every day, Kim, fully available, fully ready, prepared to take on what needs to be taken on. But we have these individuals that are constantly and consistently, again, allowed to come in and just be and do what they please. And that will affect the employee, the workplace, will affect the productivity, it will affect the business. And so many leaders, I believe, underestimate, especially if that person is a producer. Especially if, man, I can't afford to let so-and-so go because, man, she's my biggest, my strongest salesperson. He's the one that gets it done all the time. I call him by any time. How do you manage that type of relationship now? Because you may be the voice of reason at the HR level. You may be the one saying, listen, Ahmad and the team are really facing challenges because Ahmad continues to show up as A. But your leadership team is saying, but Kim, Ahmad them is bringing the money, Ahmad them is bringing the so-and-so. How do you deal with that? What's your approach to that?
Yeah, that's very interesting, because it happens. It definitely happens in workplaces, and it is sad that organizations find themselves in that predicament where they have to hold on because this individual has a strength that is impacting the business growth, right? The sales or, profit. And so you tend to hold on to that, I would say, cancer because of that. But the widespread impact can be even more costly to an organization in so many different ways. The turnover, because nobody wants to work with that individual, that's a cost, right? And so it's really understanding that one, can definitely have a major impact throughout the entire organization amongst the team. And so it's ensuring that you stay true to the principles that whether or not that individual is, performing to the level where, there's that strength that we really can't afford to lose, you have to look at it from a holistic standpoint. What other impact is this decision to keep this individual on making, having the effects in the organization?
That is so important, because what I really believe happens here is that it's a cowardly approach to leadership. When organizations decide to hold on to this cancerous person or this cancerous mindset, it's simply telling your other employees, I don't care enough about you to prioritize your safety, your psychological safety, your well-being, your productivity at work. You're letting the person, that cancerous person, if you will, you're emboldening them. You're making them feel even more empowered to do the foolishness they do every single day. And I think if leaders and organizations really understand what's the challenge here, it's the fact that the talent needs to be spread out. It's the fact that the talent needs to be cultivated. If this person is really good at what they are, as good as you say they are, there is a skill that he or she has that can be trained and taught somewhere else. Right? Versus putting up with, tolerating, allowing and enabling this person to come in and do whatever he or she says or does, or wants to do rather, and affecting the people that are trying their best to do better. Because it's simply now changing our perspective on who will now be able to sit at these tables, rewarding the right types of behavior and correcting and condemning the wrong types. In your experience, Kim, what do you believe is necessary for organizations to actually live that? You said, you've mentioned embedding it in parts of our conversation, but what specifically have you seen as a strategy that works, that people could realize, oh snap, I really have to get it together. I can't do what I've always done in the past. You know, people are prioritizing another way of leading and working. What strategy do you employ to make that happen?
Well, definitely you take action, right? And most times, you know, organizations have those as core values, you know, respect in the workplace. Those are basic core values in an organization. And once, you know, your employees see that as an organization, that those values you're living by, then that's the strategy right there. You just have to take action. You have to ensure that those type of employees are not staying in the system. And it's like you say, there's transferable skills, there's training. That person may have a skill that somebody else can tap into. But it's making sure you put those things in place where, you know, at the end of the day, you don't find yourself in the position where you have to hold on, but that the training is there, and you're able to identify strengths of other individuals to one day be prepared to take on that role so that you don't have to keep an individual in your environment who is of that, has that behavior, or is a type of employee that is not a good fit from a character standpoint in your organization.
Character over skill?
Character any day over skill.
Kim, character, the person, the actual spirit of the being over skill.
Absolutely, because that once you have that right character, you can be taught skills. And so if that character is not one that is of, you know, a standard that you want to say that your organization is about this standard. It's about people.
Yes.
When you're setting standards, it starts with your people first.
Yes.
You're not gonna set standards and people is not to the forefront of your mind. And so if that individual is not of the standard, then I don't need your skill.
Wow.
I don't need your skill.
Wow.
I can teach a skill to an individual, but I cannot teach your character.
You can teach a skill, but you cannot necessarily teach the will.
Absolutely.
You cannot make someone a better version of themselves.
Absolutely.
You can contribute. You can add value. You can kind of cultivate this concept of real human perspective. I frame it this way, Kim. I believe that there are 4 types of employees in any organization. There's the willing and able. There's the willing and unable. There's the unwilling and able, and the unwilling and unable. And what you described just now is perhaps the person that's willing but unable. I really, really want to. I have that character, I have that interest, that drive, but I'm struggling with the ability to do so right now. You're saying we can teach that person,
that can be taught.
Bring them up to the standard of actual performance, but the spirit they come with, we can't teach.
Yes, the will is always the plus.
So
the will.
Why do we keep, Kim, those that are unwilling and unable? The young man can't and he don't want to. Why do we keep paying him? Why does every week he show up on your payroll account to send this man some money? What do we need to do to get them from around our organizations?
Yeah, take action. We have to take action. We have to, you know, ensure that those type of employees does not continue in your environment, because it is a poison.
Yes.
And it can be a trickling effect. And if you allow those type of employees to remain, then it makes it look like this is your culture, this is what we're all about, this is the standard that we're setting.
Indeed.
If you continue to keep those type of individuals a part of your team.
And there's something about those types of employees that know they are the ones that are being talked about in every meeting. Especially when nothing comes out of the meeting except business as usual.
Yeah.
When we come back from our break, Kim, we're going to talk about what happens when that employee happens to be the leader.
Wow.
What do you do when that individual is not a regular line worker, they're not the cashier, they're not the production person, they're not the person in sales. This is the leader of the organization. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation. Your breakthrough is on the next side of this break. Stay tuned.
Yep.
We're here at the Nassau Village Community Center project, where over the past 17 months, we've hired over 20 Bahamian subcontractors to bring this beautiful project to fruition.
I've been living in Nassau Village for more than 19 years, and to see a project like this bring great joy and pride to me.
This state-of-the-art multi-purpose community center will serve as a crime-fighting initiative in the community. Also help with the education of our kids in this community and a hurricane shelter.
Yeah, and it also shows what we as Bahamians can achieve when we work hand in hand with each other.
We have the technical know-how, and we can pretty much deliver on any project here in the Bahamas or in the world.
Bahamas Striping, the Bahamian company, they prove that they believe in Bahamians.
Based on the outcome of this project, I don't think they're disappointed in giving a small person an opportunity to do a job such as this.
The more opportunity they get, the more opportunity we will get.
If you look around and see the work done so far, it just shows what we as Bahamians can do.
There's a spark of greatness in each of us. That spark is called personality. Individual gifts and talents provide the fuel to set that spark ablaze. Each child has the right to an education which values their personality and nurtures their talents, while teaching them to be respectful to their parents and their cultures.
Planning the execution of a newscast is serious business. From the assignment to the concept of the story, everything has to be precise, on point, always. The Bahamas Tonight, the National Report, is your trusted news service. We get it right the first time. Our preparation for you each night is done with care, knowing that our voices will reach you on 700 islands and keys with unquestionable accuracy. It gives me great pleasure each night to say,
welcome to the Bahamas Tonight, the National Report. I'm your national anchor, Makush Lapinder.
Bahamas Striping Group of Companies, we have been in Exuma now for the past 4 years, carrying out our paving program. A part of our company's philosophy is to do some work to international standards. So when you look at our paving division, we have a state-of-the-art lab to do all of our testing in-house, as well as a state-of-the-art asphalt plant with a trained technician carrying out the work on that site. The overarching goal of our company is to produce the work that we're doing in the entire Bahamas to international standards. We also make a difference by the training of our staff. We have a very intensive training program going on to where we are teaching young men how to learn the art of striping. Being a young man myself, I've made mistakes in the past. I was given a second chance to better my life, and it's only fitting that we pass it along. What's important for us is giving them a second chance for them to get a skill and a career that could take them further in life.
The internet isn't just for surfing. There's a sea of shoppers buying online, and you can connect with them on Tingsy. Tingsy is the SBDC's online storefront built for Bahamians. Take your business to the next level by selling to customers online, both at home and around the world. People want Bahamian things, and if you got things to sell, sell on Tingsy. Find out how you can connect with a sea of buyers by visiting tingsybahamas.com.
Welcome back to our final segment on the Rundown on Leadership with Kimberly Fraser, who is the head of Human Resources, Talent and Development at AML Foods Limited. Kim, we were talking about these 4 categories of employees. We're talking about prioritizing character over skill, right? When you find those employees, those individuals, whether they're employees at the line level or leaders, that find themselves in that unwilling and unable category. Let's talk about that for a bit more. Because the unwilling and unable employee, in most cases, is fully aware of their inability and their unwillingness. Other employees are also aware. Leaders are aware. They say things like, you can't mind so-and-so, don't pay him no attention, that's just the way he or she goes. But why do we say those things? Why do we continue to say we can't mind him when we could pay him? What do you think is the reason that leaders hold on or ignore the unwilling and the unable?
You said it earlier, you know, an individual like that may have a strength that is so impactful to the organization from the bottom line side.
Yes.
And a lot of organizations find themselves in that position when the skill of an individual is, it really helps propel the organization from a profitability standpoint.
Yes.
And sadly, again, you know, it impacts on the other side. And so at the end of the day, you know, it's making sure, like I say, you take action when you can take action to ensure that an employee does not continue to remain a part of your organization.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, Kim, what happens when the cancer is coming from the top. What happens when the leader is the problem? Unequivocally, you have the guess, you know that it's so-and-so that's literally driving this organization down to hell, like in hell, in hell. What do you do, Kim, when you are faced with a situation where your leader, ultimate leader, I'm talking about the CEO, the president, whatever it is pitting leader against leader, is creating circumstances to make things worse off, finds value in having leaders at odds with one another. What do you do when it's the leader that's the problem?
Well, as an HR professional, you just, you try to be forceful with it.
Yeah.
You get them to understand the magnitude of their actions. And that's all you really can do. It's really, shedding light to how it impacts the organization. What message are we sending to our team? What message are we sending to the wider community? Because, if you're talking about that top tier level, you mentioned lives are being impacted all around because an employee have a sister, a mother, a father. And so your image, the standards of your organization is being diminished because as the head, you're not setting that foundation where the organization is embedding that culture of respect within the workplace, of team spirit. The characteristics of you are in question. And so an organization is not going to have that reputation where, you get that respect. And so it's pulling it all together, shedding that light and helping them to really see a true picture and really, using some examples, using some real examples, walking them through, well, this is what happened because of this.
Wow.
And getting them to see it from that perspective, getting them to see it in real life scenarios. Hopefully, you would be able to tap into their mind and there can be a shift. And that's really all that you can do. But it's not taking that back seat and not addressing it and being afraid to address it. I'm not one to be afraid to address it.
Yes.
If my superior is watching, my superior can say, if there is something that is happening, I respect the fact that Kim is going to address it. And that's all that you can do. As professionals, as leaders, you cannot be afraid to have those difficult conversations, even with persons who are your superior.
Yes.
Even with persons who may not be your superior, but who are in these senior level positions, you cannot be afraid to have those hard conversations with the individual and trying to see how you can bring them to some sense of, awareness of their actions and the impact that is making in the environment or the organization that is negative.
Yeah. In your perspective, Kim, or from your perspective, when you find that, because that has to be done strategically, right? You can't, I wouldn't suggest that you just go into that conversation emotionally driven while your emotions should inform what it is that you need to discuss. Yeah. What strategy do you feel is best employed when that leader isn't necessarily someone that is willing to hear from your perspective, right? Listen, miss, this is my ship. If you wanted to just hop off versus, you know what, I value your opinion because maybe this person isn't that open. Yeah. Maybe this person is one of those, this is my way or the highway type of situations. What strategy do you employ to get that person to see your perspective but to understand what the cost is in the way they're acting?
Well, I think it's all about the respect that one have for you, where you're able to have those type of conversations. And even if the person feels like he or she is still going to continue on in the manner in which he or she is continuing on, at least they know that this is coming from somebody who I see as a respectful individual. And so hopefully that helps the individual to say, you know what, whether or not I'm not listening to Kim, whether or not, what she's saying is just, going through one ear and coming out of the next. At the end of the day, you should place yourself in the position where you're comfortable going and having that conversation because you're walking it, right? You're living the characters of, an individual who is well respected, has that reputation in the organization. And so it's really placing yourself in that position first where you feel comfortable that you can have that heart-to-heart conversation, and whether or not it goes in your favor or it goes in the organization's favor, at least you know that you've done your part in trying to help the situation and trying to bring awareness to that leader of their behavior or their actions. Yeah.
Kim, as we wrap up this segment, and wrap up the show actually, Do you believe that if you've come to a point where you've done all you can, you have tried the different strategies, you've even connected with different leaders on the team, you have done all you can do, as far as you can see, to make the situation better, but it's not getting any better. Does that leader, that employee, that no matter what level they find themselves at, do they have the right to leave to protect their peace?
Absolutely, and I think sometimes that happens because your peace of mind is very, very important. And sadly, it happens because you're not finding that peace in the workplace. And that's when we talk about mental health. It's, you know, wanting to put yourself in an environment where you're supported, where it's safe, where you're respected. And so sadly, there are times that people exit themselves because they can't find it where they're at.
Wow.
And that happens. That happens a lot. And sometimes people, you know, do it without even knowing what's next. But it's so important, and as you get older and as you have a deep understanding and appreciation for that emotional well-being, for that psychological well-being, then you find yourself really not wanting to put yourself in a position for a long term where these things are happening, and especially if it's coming from a leader.
Yes. Kim, I want to ask you one final question as we wrap up tonight. It may be a bit off topic, but do you believe that leaders are born or made?
That's a very interesting question. I would say leaders can be born or made, and oftentimes we think that leaders are only in management level. A leader can be anybody. A leader can be a custodian. A leader can be a cashier. Leadership does not define one by their title or by their position. And so truly, I would answer that question where I feel like as a leader, you're born. You can be born you're born as a leader.
Yes.
And indeed, through experiences, a leader can be made.
Indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, what a powerful and necessary conversation we had tonight. We often talk about leadership in terms of strategy, success, and performance, but tonight reminds us that leadership is most visible when things fall apart. When people are not doing the best they can, when things are not going as they should, when disaster strikes, when catastrophe takes place, when people are the reason the organizations are not flourishing. It's what you do next. It's the leadership that steps up with empathy, with heart, with humanity, that survives, that thrives in organizations that help themselves to be better. You do not get the right, as a leader, when catastrophe hits, when people are not doing their best, to be your worst. You do not get the right to infringe moments of insanity on your team members. When you identify those in your organization that are unwilling and unable, that are unwilling, maybe a little bit unable but unwilling, you must do the work to make that organization get better. You must, as the leader, decide that this is not going to be the legacy we stand behind. That's not just good HR, that's good leadership. That's good demonstrative leadership in the way of the workplace. And as we wrap up the conversation on what it is to be mentally conscious, to put mental health at the forefront, you must make it a priority. It is a part of your strategic plan as a leader. As we step in to Mental Health Month, as we do the thing that's going to take our organizations to the next level, it's important that you prioritize mental health, that you prioritize the safety of your employees, that you prioritize what it means to lead with truth. I want to ask you 2 questions every day. Every day you wake up, I want you to ask yourself 2 questions. When I show up, what goes well? When I show up, what goes to hell? As a leader, you are contributing to both. You cannot absent yourself. You cannot absolve yourself of the things that make organizations do well or do poorly. And every single day you wake up, before you go to your bed at night, after you say your prayers, you ask yourself, when I showed up today, what went well? When I showed up today, what went to hell? Emotional intelligence is not an option anymore. It's the thing that balances process and people. It's now necessary. And even when catastrophe hits, it's the compassion, the clarity that demonstrate that these things can both coexist. If you want to build your legacy, don't just focus on what you're building, focus on who you are becoming. Because the real leaders, the ones that are not made in the spotlight, they're the ones that are made in the storm. They're the ones that show up even when things are not going the way they should. And if no one's told you lately, the way you show up for your people when everything is falling apart, that is the legacy that they will never forget. I am so grateful that you decided to join us for this conversation tonight. Kim, it was an honor to have you this evening on the Rundown on Leadership. I believe that our people are now better off and able to now prioritize mental health. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, leaders of all generations, we will see you next week. Same time, same mission, same fire. Until then, lead with care, lead with heart, and lead with purpose. Remember to stay locked onto the ZNS Network for the Bahamas tonight at 11 p.m. It is the final newscast in the country with the latest in news and information with Royston Jones. I am Ahmad Rashad Thompson. Good evening, everyone.